Hi, this is Zach Brooks with World Transplant Athletes. Tips and tricks by and for transplant athletes anywhere, anytime, online. If you have a body with a new part and you can move, you are a World Transplant Athlete. As a two-time kidney transplant recipient and frequent participant at local, national, and world transplant games, I always wonder, how do other recipients take care of their health and prepare for competitions? For me, there's only one way to find out, and that's to learn from the most inspiring transplant athletes in the world. Today, I have Jillian Best from Canada. Jillian, welcome to the show.
Hello, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So a couple of weeks ago, you sent me your tips on how to prepare for competitions and so forth. But before we get that, I want to have some warm-up questions for you so people can get to know you a little bit. So the first question I have for you is, which transplant did you have?
I had a liver transplant 5 years ago.
Congratulations.
Thank
Um,
you.
Second question is, if you had to summarize your entire transplant journey in one word, what would it be?
I chose the word transform because after my transplant, I felt like I came out of it a different person. I had a different perspective of life. I have different goals and a new purpose.
Mm.
And over the last 5 years, I feel that I've transformed into a much stronger, grateful, and resilient person than I was before.
So some people listening to what you just said might say, well, where did your organ come from? Do you feel like you took on any personality from the organ and the person who donated that organ to you?
I honestly don't think so. I just believe that having given the second chance
Mhm.
made me really realize how precious life is.
Yeah.
Perhaps my organ donor was a very grateful person to begin with, but I do think it was the overall experience that led me to feel this way.
Yeah, absolutely. So third
Mhm.
question, warm-up question before we get to your tips is, what was your first exercise post-transplant?
Yeah, so I giggle at this one a little bit because the very first exercise that my physio gave me was sit to stands. So sitting in a chair and standing up. They wanted to ensure that I could get up and down out of a chair on my own once
Mhm.
I returned home from the hospital. But once I was able to do that, 2 months after my transplant, I returned to the pool, and swimming was my activity of choice. And I haven't stopped swimming since.
Yeah, so I mean, that's a fantastic story because so I'll tell the viewers a little bit. I mean, Jillian has been extremely successful at the World Transplant Games, won 5 gold medals and 5 world records. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So her first training session was literally just sitting and then standing. That was it. So I just think that's a remarkable starting point. So
Mhm.
it's good for anyone who might be listening to this or watching this and who's still in the hospital. Like maybe you just had your transplant yesterday, you woke up today. What is your world like? Well, if you're just sitting and standing, that is step one to training and doing some amazing things later. So in which
Mhm.
activities and sports do you regularly participate?
So swimming is number one.
Mhm.
It's my favorite. I get the most enjoyment out of it. I do like to run. I like hiking. I like walking my dogs, and I've taken on prone paddling this past year, which is I describe it like a surfboard, but you lay on it and you paddle with your arms. So
Excellent.
those
Thank
are those are my favorite
you.
activities.
Okay. So let's get to the heart of the show. A couple of weeks ago, you shared 5 tips with me on how to exercise or train. And I'm going to read those tips 1 through 5, and then we'll go back to the top and you can talk through those a little bit. So the first tip that Jillian has for everyone is enjoy the sport or activity you're choosing to do. Number 2, make it routine or schedule it. Number 3, utilize online resources for research. Number 4 is get a coach or train with a team or a group. And the final one that Jillian has for us today is goal setting. So let's go back to the top, number 1. The first one, you say enjoy the sport or the activity you're doing. Tell us why you think that's so important in your experience.
Yeah, I think it's really important to find an activity that you find enjoyable, that is fun. This ensures that you're most likely to continue doing it and prioritizing the time to do your sport and do it more often, especially if you're going to be putting hours into this activity if you want to train for an event at the World Transplant Games.
Yeah, or anything for that matter. Gosh, if you're not a swimmer, you should try bowling or like something you really like to do, whatever that is. So,
Yeah, yeah.
number two, you have make it a routine or schedule it. Why is that so important for you?
It's important because I think having a schedule and putting that into your calendar makes it a priority. And I like to schedule every single workout that I do.
Hmm.
Um, and, this has to do with our mental health and our physical health. And it is that important that it needs to be put in a calendar, I believe.
Hmm.
And it helps to hold you accountable for making the time for it and getting it done.
Yeah, I read a lot of self-help books. I write them too, and I read other ones to help me figure out, things to write about. And one of the concepts is like scheduling success. That if you schedule incremental things in your life, whatever it is, 15 minutes, 3 times a week on X activity, then you are going to get better. So I think scheduling is extremely important for any activity you
Mm.
want to become good at. The third tip you have is utilizing online resources. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I believe immersing yourself in the sport really helps to inspire you and motivate you to keep doing it. So, for example, my favorite Olympian is Cody Miller. He's an Olympic breaststroker. I enjoy watching his YouTube channel. He's very positive, motivational, and I think learning from others about safety and different ways you can train and becoming better at the sport it's helped me tremendously in avoiding setbacks, avoiding injuries, and just learning things the hard way.
Hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. That's important. Well, I know from some cognitive science research I've come across that, when you watch an activity, your mirror neurons, which are basically all the neurons in your body that you think you're doing the activity of the person you're watching, that actually is some sort of form of training. If you see Olympic swimmers, in your case, swim and do turns and all these other things, it actually is a form of training because your mind is kind of training the body what's coming next. So you're actually getting yourself
Hmm.
ready for the next activity. So the fourth
Hmm.
tip you have here is get a coach or train with teams or some sort of group. Why has that been so important for you?
I love having a coach. I love training with a team. I think your coach can help you with the training program that helps reduce stress about what should I be doing when I go to the pool or go to the gym.
Mhm.
Um, it's laid out for you, and you know what you're going to do when you get there. And your coach can ensure that your form and your technique is good,
Mhm.
or give you the advice that you need if you need some correction to avoid injuries. Um, and having teammates and or a group to train with makes it a lot more fun, and it can hold you accountable for showing up.
Mhm.
It creates friendly competition as well,
Yeah.
and for me, I find it helps me train harder, so I push myself more when I'm with other people, and I find that I get a better workout than I would if I was on my own.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm also thinking in terms of COVID, like as the world in different phases comes back to normal and interacts more, how important it is for mental and social health to interact with people. And there is this other thing called I came across it the other day, reentry anxiety. So if you're coming back to a social group, you might have some anxiety about it, but overall, it's really important for your mental and social health. And the
Hmm.
final tip you have for us, Jillian, is goal setting. So why is that so important? You touched on it earlier a little bit, but tell us why that's so important for you.
Yeah, so having a goal gives you more purpose behind your training, which gives you more motivation to keep you training for your sport or your event. And I find, you may have a big goal, but breaking it down into smaller short-term goals
Mhm.
to help you reach the big goal can help break it down into more, I like to say, bite-sized pieces that aren't as overwhelming. So it helps you to not look at the big picture every single day, but you're working on these smaller goals that will eventually get you to where you want to be, which could be competing at the World Transplant Games.
Yeah, so let's go on that. Let's drill down on that a little bit. So you said, have a goal and that helps you motivation. And then before we started the interview today, you were telling me about your training this morning and how you felt early on. And I was thinking to myself, there's no way you would have continued that training today if you didn't have the big goal, which helped your motivation. So can you share some of that, what you shared with me earlier about how long you were in the water and how you felt and what helped you get through it?
Yeah. So as I was saying this morning, I got in the water and it was cold. It was 48 Fahrenheit, and I knew that I had a 5K swim ahead of me. And I said to my mom, who was next to me, that I felt wimpy. I didn't feel like getting in. And about 5 minutes in, I'm thinking, oh, I'm cold. My face is numb. But as I said earlier, I try not to believe any thoughts that I'm having in the first 20 minutes to half an hour of my workout, because I am just warming up. And it was about half an hour later where I started feeling great and my stroke felt smooth. My face felt fine from the cold water, and I actually really enjoyed my swim. So
Mhm.
I find that, um, you know, all I had to focus on that day was the 5K swim. I wasn't thinking about the marathon swim that I'm training for, at the end of the summer. I mean, it's in the back of my mind, but I'm not thinking that I'm overwhelmed about it in that moment. I'm really focused on the present moment and getting through that training swim that will eventually lead me to my bigger goal.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, after you told me that story, I connected the goal and the motivation. Like seems to me like almost no chance you would have stuck with it today if you didn't have the motivation that came from the bigger goal of this competition later this summer. So thanks for sharing
For
that. And
sh-
what I wrote this down earlier, this is so well said that don't remember anything the first, 30 minutes or something like that. What did you say earlier?
Oh,
Oh,
don't believe your don't believe any thoughts you have the first half an hour during your warm up, because um like I said, I felt kind of bad at the beginning, but if I had believed myself that, oh, this is going to be a bad swim, I feel awful, that sets a negative mindset.
mhm,
So I really try to remember that at the beginning of my workouts, like, okay, you're feeling a little rough right now, but give it some time, and you'll start feeling better. And I always do. And
mhm.
so I've kind of taught myself not to believe myself, not to believe those thoughts that come up in the first part of my workout, because it's going to get better, and you'll pass it. And you want to have good thoughts, and that mental chatter going on in your head. You want to ensure that it's not bringing you down. So
Absolutely. Thank you
yeah.
so much, Jillian. That's fantastic. So, for everyone else out there, thank you for watching. Thanks again to Jillian Best from Canada. For audience members, you can log into facebook.com/World Transplant Athletes on a weekly basis, approximately. I'll post some other video podcasts from other athletes. World Transplant Athletes, tips and tricks by and for transplant athletes anywhere, anytime online. If you have a body with a new part and you can move, you are a world transplant athlete. Jillian, thanks again for being on the show.
It was my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.